Hey everybody, Ryan here at Etrailer. Today on our 2023 Chevy Equinox, we're going to be showing you how to install the Demco Air Force One supplemental braking system, which is designed to work with freightliner chassis that have the brake sync installed. But before we get into the installation, why don't we just take a minute, check this out, and make sure it's going to work for you. Before we jump right in, I figured it'd be useful just to touch base and refresh yourselves on the main parts that we're going to need to flat tow our Equinox down the road in the first place. First component will be your base plate. What that's going to do is provide us with a solid and reliable connection point. That way we can hook our tow bar up to it. Tow bar is that second component, and this is going to be the physical link that actually connects the front of your Equinox to the back of your coach. The third main component will be safety cables. These are pretty straightforward. These are there in the event of an unlikely disconnect to keep everything paired together. The fourth main component will be tow bar wiring. And what this is going to do is transfer the lighting functions from the back of your RV to the back of your Equinox, keeping you safe and legal. And last but not least, the fifth main part will be a supplemental braking system. And what this is going to do is apply the brakes in your Chevy whenever you hit the brakes in your motorhome, bringing you to a more complete and predictable stop. Something else that I do highly recommend for the Equinox is picking up a battery charge line kit. And what this is going to do is maintain your battery voltage whenever you're flat towing, which on this vehicle is especially important, because not only is your supplemental braking system using battery power whenever you're towing, but since Equinox has electric assisted power brakes, the factory braking system is also going to use battery power. So what can happen over time towing, if this battery gets depleted enough, the braking components won't work as they should, kind of defeating the whole purpose of having all this stuff on here. So a charge line kit is going to maintain the battery and prevent that from happening. So the one thing that really separates this kit from some of the others is the fact that it is designed to work with these freightliner chassis with the brake sync installed, which it's really cool that the chassis manufacturers are starting to do that, because they see how popular flat towing is becoming. And so with that said, you need to have that brake sync on your chassis for this to work, because essentially they took the motorhome side of Air Force One components and installed them right from the factory. So, that's one of the things about this braking system. If you have that on your motorhome already, this makes complete sense to use, because they kind of set it up for you already. So why not take advantage of that? They're confident in it, and we should be as well. Which brings me to my next point. If your motorhome doesn't have that, not a big deal. The Air Force One comes in several different kits. There's ones that come with the vehicle side and the motorhome side, all the stuff you'll need there. There's some kits designed to even work with other types of chassis, other manufacturers that are doing kind of a similar thing, setting the motorhome side up already for you. So regardless of your situation and regardless of what air brake style motorhome you have, there's going to be a solution for you. With this system, it's going to be truly proportional, which is a good thing. So what that means is however hard you hit the brake in the motorhome, the Equinox is going to do the same thing and match that pressure. So essentially, you're slowing down as one cohesive unit. The car's not wanting to kind of drag and pull the motorhome back, or vice versa. The car's not going to not brake hard enough and kind of want to push you around. So overall, that just makes your braking experience that much better and that much more predictable. So kind of give an example that, let's say if we're going down the road and maybe we hit a stoplight up ahead and you're, halfway on the brake pedal, something like that. Equinox is going to do the same thing. On the other hand, if we have to slam our brake down, maybe in an emergency type situation, the Equinox is going to respond the same way. So like I said, because of that, just gives you a little more confidence when you do get into a braking type situation. The kit is going to come with a wireless coach link monitor, which is this piece here. And these are pretty cool because they just plug into a 12-volt cigarette style outlet, and that powers them up. And this is just letting you know that your brakes are being applied in the Equinox. So if I hit our motorhome's brake, you know, the Equinox brake pedal goes down and we get some LEDs there illuminating, letting us know that, hey, something's going on in the Equinox, brake pedal's being pushed, and we're in good shape. Also kind of lets you know if anything's wrong too. You know, if you let off the brake in the motorhome and this stays red the whole time and the brakes are dragging, you know, that's going to give you an indicator saying, hey, I should probably pull over or go back there and check things out, make sure everything's in good shape. The kit is going to come with a breakaway switch, which is a safety device. What happens with this, if you were in an unlikely disconnect, this pin would get pulled, and what that's going to do is apply the brakes in the Equinox, helping to kind of slow things down and get back under control. And with the Freightliner chassis having that brake sync installed, it uses a different style air fitting, if you will. So it's going to come with the right hose. You know, one end will plug into the vehicle side, and then the other end will plug into the brake sync. So you're not going to have to worry about sourcing the proper fittings and things like that. Essentially, it's ready to go. Do just want to give you a couple options in case your motorhome does not have air brakes in general. One of the braking systems that I really like is the Demco Stay and Play. So if your motorhome has hydraulic brakes, that's what I like to use. And one that'll work for all different types of motorhomes is the Blue Ox Patriot portable style braking system. That's a good option kind of across the board, especially if you get new cars a lot or don't want a permanent type braking system installed. But with that said, you know, if your motorhome has a brake sync on it, kind of a no-brainer to use a kit like this. You know, it's designed to work with it. And even motorhomes with air brakes in general, let's say if you have an older motorhome and don't have this brake sync, that regular Air Force One full kit will definitely get the job done. As far as the installation goes, compared to a lot of the braking systems out there, this one really is not too bad. I only have a handful of major components, not a lot of wiring or nothing to route either, especially on the Equinox. It's about as simple as it gets for a permanent type braking system. But if you'd like to see how it's done, feel free to hang around. We'll go ahead, pull into the garage, and get started on it now. Before we even get started and even open the hood on our vehicle, I figured it'd be a good idea just to kind of lay out a lot of our main parts and kind of go over where they're going to be mounted and things like that. So why don't we jump right in and start with our operating unit. The main operating unit is going to be kind of the brain behind this system, and 9 times out of 10, at least in my experience, this is usually going to get mounted up in the engine compartment. Moving on to our breakaway switch and our air fitting, and you know, we'll show you how we did ours and how we mounted things and everything. Just wanted to kind of go over everything quickly, kind of give you an idea. So generally speaking, at the front of the vehicle, you're going to be able to mount up your breakaway switch, as well as the air fitting for our air hose to plug into the back of the motorhome. Then moving to the inside of the vehicle, you're going to have this actuator cylinder here, and this is simply just going to get bolted to the brake pedal arm, and then this little anchor piece is going to get connected to the firewall. And what this is going to do is actually push the brake pedal whenever the operating system turns on. As far as the wireless coach link monitor goes, that's usually going to be mounted somewhere under the dash or driver's side kick panel area, generally speaking. And what this is going to do is communicate with the coach link monitor inside of your RV. Whenever the brake pedal's being pushed down, this will send that signal out, letting you know what's going on from inside of your motorhome. Now that we came up with a rough game plan, we can put it into play. So we'll first, find a spot to mount up our operating unit. So on this vehicle, I found a couple of different locations. One of them is on the back of the core support here. You could bolt this up to that. We've done it in the past and works out just fine. To me though, it's a little too close to some hot parts for my liking, so I opted to make a bracket and do a little something different, kind of in the corner of our vehicle on the driver's side. So what I chose to do is actually make a bracket here for our main operating unit to set on. And I just, took a piece of, I think this is 1 inch by 1/8 inch steel, bent it, and secured it to some factory metal here. So it's super solid. I put a piece of thin foam tape on it too, just to help prevent vibration. And then on the back side of our operating unit, I use some foam as well, just because it's going to be sitting somewhat close to our fender there. I don't have to, but just something I had on hand, so I figured why not. But this is going to slide in, and I drilled holes to line up. So I'm just going to take some hardware and bolt it down. Got the operating unit all bolted down, really solid, not going anywhere. And since we're right here, you might as well handle one of these wires real quick. So you'll have 2 black wires coming out of the operating unit. One of them will have to get connected to ground. It doesn't matter which one. And it turns out we have a factory ground stud right there. And so I'm just going to cut our wire to length, so we don't need a bunch of extra. And I'll strip the insulation back, give it a twist, and then I'll take a ring terminal, slide that over the bare end of the wire, and crimp it down. And this post, the nut, you're going to remove that with a 10 millimeter. Just slide your ring terminal over it and tighten it back down. In the front, you can get your breakaway switch and your air fitting mounted up. So this is really straightforward here. The breakaway switch, our base plate had an attachment point tab that you can just bolt to it. And I use that same bolt to mount up our air fitting. So with our air fitting, to help bring it out a little bit further, to make it just look better more or less, I did take another piece of metal and made a little 4-inch bracket, just bolted it to it and secured it all with that one bolt there. I think it turned out pretty good. And since we're right here and kind of going to be working our way up, I figured now it'd be a good time too to kind of start to route some of our wires off the breakaway switch and get our airline tube hooked up. You'll take one end of the bundle of airline tube that they give you, and you want a good clean straight cut on the end of it. So you can use a tool like this or even a regular razor knife and put this on a block of wood or something. Or we also carry tubing cutters. But you're looking for a good clean straight cut. You don't want any burrs or anything like that on it, because if so, it'll have the potential to leak. So this looks really good. And these are quick connect fittings, so they're really straightforward. Essentially all you're going to do is take the airline tube and it just kind of snaps right into place there. To route the airline tube as well as our breakaway switch wires, we're just going to run them along the top of our base plate here, up like this. The breakaway switch wires end right here, and that's fine. We'll come back to them later. We'll just kind of push them out of the way for now. But the airline tube, that's going to go up to our main operating unit. So that just kind of runs through this opening and will come out in the engine compartment, kind of behind our headlight. Here's where our airline tube comes up into the engine compartment. Kind of just routed it around through there. And at that point, I cut it to length, the same way we did just a minute ago. Make sure that cut is clean. And this will just get plugged right into the operating unit on the fitting that's labeled air in. Now you can grab a piece of the rubber hose that comes in the kit and cut it maybe a few inches long. There's going to be this plug that also comes with it. You take the plug and push it down into one end of the hose there. And sometimes it helps too if you kind of, push on the end of the hose here to make this easier. But since we have electric assisted brakes, we don't need to worry about hooking up a vacuum. So that's what we're using this for. We're just going to plug this fitting here. So that'll just slide right on like that. Moving back to our breakaway switch wires, what I did was take some butt connectors and actually extend them. That way we can, run the wires through the same path that we took to get our air line into the engine compartment to be able to get the wires in there. And it just so turned out I happen to have matching color wires, which I try to do just to help the video make more sense, but you can use whatever color wires you got, I did decide to use heat shrink style butt connectors. So these work the same as regular ones as far as crimping it down, but the ends seal up and just offers a little more protection against corrosion. So you can always pick these up here. But with that said, I'll come in with my heat source and seal up the ends. So like I said, the black and orange wires that we extended, I just routed them up into the engine compartment, same way we did our end tube. And the black wire from the breakaway switch, that's going to get connected using a butt connector to the other remaining black wire coming out of our main operating unit. For the orange wire from our breakaway switch, you can strip that insulation back a little long. And then there's a bundle of brown wiring that comes in the kit. Take one end of that, strip it back as well. And what you're going to do is twist these two ends together nice and tight. All right. And grab your fuse holder that comes in the kit. Make sure the fuse is not installed. We'll do that at the very end. But one end, crimp on a ring terminal, the other end, a butt connector. And you're going to take these two ends and place them into the end of that butt connector there. I'll crimp it down and shrink up the ends. The ring terminal that we attach to the fuse holder, that's going to get connected to the positive battery post. We're going to use this nut here. Thing is, this nut doesn't come off completely. So what we'll do is come to our ring terminal here, cut an opening in it, and I'm actually going to kind of make this a little bit smaller. Kind of give us a better bite. The point of doing that is so we can loosen up this nut and we can actually sneak that ring terminal around there, hold it in place, and then tighten it back down. We can move inside of our vehicle now, and we're going to be here on the driver's side working underneath the dash, and we're going to mount up our transducer as well as our actuator cylinder. Before we actually mount anything, we want to find a place that we can get our wiring and our airline tubing through. So on the firewall, if you peel back the insulation there, you'll see a big factory grommet. And I drilled a small hole through mine to allow us to pass wires and whatnot through. Be extremely careful when you're doing this. You don't want to get your drill bit hung up in there and then have it spin on you and hit the factory wires. So just be very deliberate, take your time. But with that said, what you can do is take the rest of your airline tubing and then take a piece of a white wire, or just a random piece of wire that'll come in your kit for if you have any extra, maybe a few feet long. Tape the tubing and the wire together and push that through to the outside of the engine compartment. And then on On the other end of the tubing, take that brown wire, that extra one that we tied in there that went to our fuse holder, and pull the brown wire through. So in the floorboard here, you'll have a total of 3 things: your nylon air tube, a white wire, and that brown wire. Now we can mount up our wireless coach link here, and this is really straightforward. They give you some hook and loop fasteners, and I just put them on the bottom of this fuse panel cover here, and that will stick right to it. Now you can move to your brake pedal arm and actually mount up the actuator cylinder. So with this, it just clamps onto the arm, and you tighten these down. You don't need to get crazy. I like to take a 3/8 deep well, tighten one, you know, kind of do an X pattern, kind of draw everything in evenly. When you mount this, you want it to be, you know, somewhat have a straight shot there and be up high enough to kind of stay out of your way of your foot, but not up so high that we're going to lose all the leverage that this needs to operate properly. To secure the anchor coming off the cable to the firewall, what you're going to do is kind of cut that carpeting back, and the kit's going to come with a bracket that has 3 holes in it. The 2 holes on the left are facing towards the outside. You're going to use self-tapping screws to run them into the firewall, but you want that that last hole, to kind of overhang. And that's so we can have a straight shot with our cable there. So the cable that comes off the cylinder, you want it to be as straight as you can get it. And that's kind of how we set it up, really the only option there. So I used a nut and a bolt to secure the anchor to the bracket, and you can also set the slack or the tension on that cable. All right, and when the brake pedal is in its resting state, you want to have a little bit of movement there, a little bit of slack. That way, you know, this isn't constantly putting pressure on your brake pedal when it doesn't need to be. So to accomplish that, on that anchor, there's a 4mm Allen head set screw that you can loosen up, pull slack out, or, you know, tighten it back up, and then run that set screw down to achieve the proper slack there and the steel cable. With this all set up now, you can take the air line that we ran in and put a good clean cut on it and plug it into the cylinder exactly the same way that we've done all of our other fittings this far. And there's also going to be a cable, an electrical cable that comes off of our cylinder, and that's just going to get routed right through here, right to the kick panel of our vehicle. The cable from our actuator cylinder, that actually breaks off into 2 separate wires. You're going to have a blue one and a brown one. The blue wire, that's going to get connected to the red wire coming from our wireless coach link. So just use your butt connectors there. The brown wire from our actuator cylinder, that's going to get connected to the brown wire that runs out into the engine compartment, using the same method there. So everything under here is hooked up. You do want to touch base on this extra white wire though. So like I said, we had the white wire coming out of our wireless transducer, and we extended it, running it out into the engine compartment. That's actually going to be a ground. So let's go under the hood real quick and show you where we have this set up. That white wire runs through our grommet, and I cut it the length, crimped on a ring terminal, and simply just grounded it to this post here where we have some of our other grounds set up. One more thing we need to do here on our operating unit. So the airline tube that we ran from our actuator cylinder, that just needs to get cut the length, just like we did the others, and that will plug into the air out port there on the main unit. With everything all hooked up now, we can come back to our fuse holder and install the included fuse. With the vehicle side all wrapped up, all we have left to do now is come into the motorhome and set up our wireless coach link monitor. So nothing to this one, you know, put it where you want it. They give you quite a bit of cable to work with, and this simply just plugs right into a 12-volt power supply. So I got everything hooked up, you know, to the motorhome and our vehicle. And if I hit the brake, those lights are telling me that the brake pedal in the Equinox is being pushed down. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Demco Air Force One supplemental braking system, designed to work with freightliner chassis with the brake sync on our 2023 Chevrolet Equinox.